Hello, hello, everyone. How's it going? How is it going? See people coming in here. If you wouldn't mind, come into the chat, say hello, your name, your company that you're with, and your favorite Thanksgiving food. So I don't have Taylor Swift playing this time. I don't have any music this time because I'm going to be dialing in for a audio perspective. You don't have Thanksgiving in New Zealand, Jordan. Good point. True story. For my first MarTech company, stuffing is the best. Aiden nailed it. True story. When I was working for my first MarTech company, I remember that I got the job, got the offer, and kind of as a sign-off email message to the new CRO that I was going to be working for, I said, hey, thanks so much, excited to get started, X, Y, and Z. And then I said, and hope you have a great Thanksgiving. And then I took a second and I'm like, wait, he's based in Germany. Whoops. True story. He said he got the email later and he was like, this is not a good fit. Fried turkey with sweet rolls. Fried turkey. Interesting. What are sweet rolls? Are those like Hawaiian based rolls? Like it's a sweet bread kind of thing? Pumpkin pie. That's a really good one. I don't like pumpkin pie. For some reason, it's too middle down the road. I think about the inside of a pumpkin. I just get freaked out from a texture perspective. Yes, Hawaiian rolls are incredible. Texas Roadhouse. We got Texas in the house. Texas Roadhouse, isn't it the place when I was at A&M? They had a Texas Roadhouse, and I think there's peanut shells on the floor. Like you eat peanuts in the beginning, and then you throw them on the floor. Maybe I'm getting that completely wrong. Apple pie is a very good one. Not traditional Thanksgiving, but I love apple pie. Key lime pie is probably my favorite. Milk chocolates. You guys are dropping some stuff that's not traditional Thanksgiving. We've got milk chocolates, Hawaiian bread, and then we've got fried turkey and apple pie. I'm a little confused. I think we may have misunderstood the assignment. Stuffing, mashed potatoes, biscuits. Those are going to be my top three for sure. Pumpkin cheesecake, Nick, plus. Cornbread stuffing, plus. Yes. Now, anything carb based. I asked someone this weekend, this is going to be way too much information, but he was waxing my eyebrows. Don't they look great? Don't they look awesome? Awesome. And I said, what's your favorite Thanksgiving food? And he said, green beans. And I'm like, green bean casserole, like the thing that looks kind of gray and questionable, but it's actually pretty good. And he said, no, it is just plain green beans. I'm like, dude, that's the healthiest thing ever. So Chris, I saw that some people are saying you can't see me. If you could do me a favor, if you could go to the webinar and pin my, I've got two dial-ins. My internet's acting kind of weird. So if you could pin the one, there are two different, there's one as a panelist, one as a host. So if you could pin the screen with me as a host, because I'm going to be sharing from that screen, and let me know if you can see it. But yeah, so sorry, my internet's been acting really wonky. So I'm actually dialing in from an audio perspective from my phone so that you all don't see a dip. Okay, so we got a question here, and then we're going to jump into the content. Unrelated to Thanksgiving, that hurts my feelings, Danny. Asked it to from the tour, register for the webinar, got pulled in a meeting. I've tried to watch the on-demand, but never get the link. Okay, if you would email Jack Kozakowski, JACK.KOSAWSKI at creationagency.com and tell him that. So and he will get it to you. So I don't know why that's not working. So you can't see me either. So Elizabeth, if everyone on the line would pin my screen, there should be two different video and audio, two separate ones for video and audio because of my internet that I'm dialing in from. So if you could, there's no option to pin. Okay, so this is what I'm going to do then. We're going to use my main internet, but full disclosure, I'm not sure how great it is. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to kill my link with my audio, and we're going to keep going on my main link here. So it only has one. And just let me know if there's a lag. And if there's a lag, we're just gonna have to reschedule the webinar. I'm so sorry, my internet's been acting really weird. So I'm gonna leave as this person. Okay, can everyone hear me now? Okay, awesome. You can still hear me. Okay, awesome. Okay, awesome. You can hear me. There might be a little bit of a lag. I'm so sorry. We're just gonna have to figure out a way to deal with it. But if there's a lag, if there's a major lag, be sure to go in the chat and tell me. Thank you, Susan. Thank you for the comment about the eyebrows. I just got them done. Just got them done. So welcome to the webinar on TOR asset number 3. Full disclosure, this is going to be the most technical webinar I think I've done in my career. So I'm going to go very, very deep into the different concepts of personalization, relevance, trigger-based relevance, core relevance, and how do you intertwine all of that into an actual playbook. So we're going to do 2 different playbooks today. We're going to do, if you believe in personalization, if you want to do personalization, if you value that, if you want to do that at scale, and then also if you're a part of the dark side and you don't. No judgment. We're going to go into both of those today. So first, I'm going to go ahead and start by sharing my screen. So let me know if you can see my screen. So this first asset, and this is the asset that we covered in the first webinar, this is the encyclopedia of sales plays. And so the reason I'm bringing this up, I'm not going to go in too deep here, but the reason that I bring this up is this is going to be all trigger-based relevance. So before I go into that, let's define, there is a lot, there are more wrong answers from my view than there are right answers on what's the difference between relevance and personalization. So I first want to define those and then get after the core value of how to intertwine all of them. So relevance is going to be defined as simply put, you can send a message to more than one person based on that messaging at hand. So I'd say 99.9% of the industry is sending those kind of templates with no personalization of I'm going to send a message that I think is relevant to them, this group of people, and I'm going to put those people into this sequence or into this cadence, and I'm going to send them out some type of message that I can send to multiple people at once. So you have a cohort essentially that you are lumping on. That's going to be relevance. There are 2 types of relevance, but trigger-based and core relevance, but that is going to be a relevant message only. So these first plays, and I went into this in the webinar, but there are 4 different types of movements that you can have, or really just 3 different types of movement that you can have in terms of your prospect. So the first is going to be inbound. I'm not going to spend much time here, but in inbound, the movement is that they're coming to you and they're asking to see your product. So they're requesting a demo or they come in through the chat box. But this is a way to lump people together in a one-to-many fashion of their movement, their trigger, if you will, is that they're coming to me and they're asking to see my product. So everyone wants more of these. The reason is they have higher buyer intent, they self-diagnose a problem, they're more ready to buy. That's what's going to increase the likelihood of conversion. You're going to usually have around 35% of people convert on the inbound line because they self-identified a problem. So this is going to be a great bucket, but the trigger-based relevance here is that they are an inbound lead, meaning they're coming to you and they are asking to see your product. And you can define, If you're doing relevance messaging only, meaning you don't want to incorporate any kind of personalization, you can define the entire play by this. And I would suggest you do so for inbound. Notice you requested a demo. How are these times? Include a chili piper link. That's going to speed up. It's going to speed up the buyer process and drive way more conversion. Different webinar for a different time. But you can define plays here in a one-to-many fashion only if you don't want to incorporate personalization of, notice you requested a demo, etc. The second type of trigger-based relevance, and I promise I'm not going to spend too much time here. I'm going to do probably 5 more minutes on this, and then I'm going to go into how to incorporate the rest. The second type of trigger-based relevance, or trigger, if you will, is that they engaged with some of your marketing content. So it's going to be dependent on the source of the lead of what type of content they engage with. But they either downloaded your content, or they attended a webinar, of a company webinar that you do, or they registered for a webinar but didn't attend. Or and you can do that for ones that your company has, or ones that your company sponsors. They attended an event, they registered for an event but didn't attend. They joined a community, they joined a sponsored community, they got a freemium account, they got a free trial account. There's a little bit of a difference. A free trial is only for a short period of time, usually a higher product. You'll see more of the product. A freemium account is just the account's always free. But they joined one of your social media accounts, or they just subscribe to your blog or your newsletter. But the trigger here is that they engage with some of your marketing content. They engage with some of your marketing content, or they're researching you, one of the two. So this is a very big underutilized buckets for companies. And the reason that it's underutilized is most of your buyers, nay, all of them are looking to do some level of research on your company before they engage with you to request a demo. They also, people who are very qualified in terms of the company that they're a part of, or the lead that they are, will download your content. But what I hear from inbound SDR teams is that these leads aren't high quality. And what I hear from the AE teams is these leads aren't high quality. And what they mean is there's no buyer intent. Like, they didn't actually come to see you or ask to get your product. But the reason it's underutilized is there's a huge volume of these, and it's very quality volume. It's a lot of different people who hit your ICP, ICT and ICC, ideal customer company and ideal customer title, but they only downloaded content. And the reason people don't think they convert is they send them a message that says, hey, thanks for attending the webinar. Want to buy FliptheScript? And the action that they took was they just wanted to attend the webinar. So this is the second type of trigger-based relevance that you can cohort people who downloaded your content, people who are attending a webinar, people who attend an event. And if you want to do no personalization, you could just, send out those messages with relevance only. They're not going to be highly effective, but you're going to send it for relevance only. So this is the second type of trigger-based relevance that you can do. The third type of relevance is a trigger-based relevance is going to be bridge-bound. And bridge-bound is they took some type of action or did some type of movement, but the movement wasn't in relation to your marketing team. So for instance, they closed lost, or they went to another company and they've already bought you before, or they opened your prospecting emails, or they requested a demo, but they didn't actually schedule one, or they IPO'd, or they were acquired, or they acquired another company. There's 4 different categories to this: bridge-bound based on relationship, bridge-bound based on history, some previous existing history, bridge-bound based on an educated guesser and market based off of a trigger, and then bridge-bound based on symptoms, problems, or pains, meaning they took some action that makes you believe that they have the pain or problem that you solve for. So these, again, there's going to be two categories here that will raise the likelihood they'll take a meeting, but not they'll necessarily buy. And then two categories that will raise the likelihood that they'll ultimately buy. So all of these are going to be trigger-based relevance only. So it's relevance based on some type of movement. So you have inbound, that the trigger was they want to talk to you about your product. You have postbound, that the trigger was they interact with your marketing team or your website, or they're researching you. And then you have bridge-bound, which is they took some kind of action standalone that makes you believe that they want to buy your product. You know, so they IPO'd, for instance, or they're in hyper growth, or they moved headquarters. So the trigger really was standalone, but that trigger makes you believe that they might want to buy your product, or it has introduced a problem essentially that you solve for. So I want to go into now the personalization. Let's go into core relevance. Let's go into core relevance, actually. So I'm going to share my screen again on the third asset, the asset that we are going to go into today. So let me know if you can't see my screen, but this is the third asset, and trigger-based relevance and core relevance have a difference. So what I mean by core relevance, and this is usually what you're going to see in the industry is defined as relevance, and there's only 5 types. But core relevance is you want to message people based on a common, pain point, common problem, etc. But it's static. It's not based on a trigger. So what's, relevant to them in terms of their buyer persona? What matters to them in terms of their buyer persona? What problems you actually solve for? What matters to them in terms of their segment? Of enterprise, I'm going to sell differently or going to run into different problems than an SMB organization, for instance. So if I'm an SMB or selling into an SMB organization, I'm usually going to be talking about the problem that they don't have a playbook. They don't have any centralized playbook that is highly effective that can get leads going. If I'm talking to an enterprise organization, then one of their biggest problems is going to be scale. How do I scale this across different geos, across different reps, and make sure that everyone's honed in on the same playbook? But point being, this is different types of static relevance, meaning there's no movement. They just hit a profile of people that they hit a certain profile. So the profile of their different buyer, I'm in sales enablement versus sales versus SDR, or company segment, industry vertical, company product sophistication. So this would be the industry vertical is MarTech versus sales tech, et cetera. Company product sophistication. So this is, how long they've been an organization, how many products they have, et cetera, and their tech stack. But these are the 5 types of core relevance. So relevance, again, is you're able to cohort people. In trigger-based relevance, you're able to cohort them based on an action. And that's all in the encyclopedia. And then core relevance, you're cohorting them based on a static criteria. They are this buyer persona. So the difference between that and personalization is going to be one-to-one messaging. So one-to-one is I can't cohort anyone. It's one-to-one, right? So, and this is what's going to really, from a high level, get your prospects' attention. And the reason it's going to get their attention, if I had to guess, is it's a pattern interrupt. So your bodies are designed, my body is designed to identify things that don't hit a pattern, to pay attention to them. And the reason we're anatomically designed like that is we want to guard against threats. So something might be threatening if it's different, right? So if it's not normal, whatever that is, then I'm going to pay attention to it because I need to decipher very quickly from a fight or flight perspective, is this something that's going to hurt me or is this something that's not going to hurt me? So that's all pre-wired in your brain. So personalization from a high level, especially when given in the subject line, is going to increase the open rates. And in the body of the email, it's going to increase the likelihood that they're going to keep reading and how they're going to feel about you whenever they do. So in the subject line, if you say your article on blank, it interrupts a pattern that's a normal sales email or a normal marketing email, because it's about you in specific. And so it's going to interrupt that pattern. So it's going to get a higher open rate than normal. So typically I'll see people that are deploying a personalization. They're deploying personalization. They're like, I'm not seeing higher open rates. And I'm like, well, let me see your subject line. And it's like generic subject line. I'm like, well, this is your problem. It shouldn't be affecting your open rates because you're not harboring the personalization within the subject line. So there's 6 different buckets of personalization. I know I've drowned on and on and on about this. So I'm not going to cover them too heavily today. But essentially there's 6 buckets of personalization in here. And what I mean by that is it's one-to-one messaging, meaning you sent this message, you're sending this message to this person and this person only. There are a lot of different studies on this. In the beginning, whenever people saw their first name, they thought, oh, this is personalized to me. So it increased the likelihood that they would open it, until they figured out that you could do that at scale. So we view time investment as a reciprocal action. If someone invests in me, then I invest back in them. So the CMO of Lyft once said it, and I thought it was brilliant, of if you want 15 minutes of my time, give me 5 minutes first by researching me. So if someone doesn't invest in me, meaning they send out a mass blast email, and I respond to the email, from a psychology view, I feel like a chump. They didn't invest in me really at all. And now I'm investing all of this time back by going into a sales cycle. So making someone feel special and making someone feel unique is going to be much on your side in prospecting. Making them feel like they're different than any other person that you've come across, different enough to where you wanted to pay attention to them. So the group bill mentality versus a singular bill mentality. One case scenario, I'm going to go to a restaurant and I'm going to order a certain amount of food. I'm paying the bill. And the second case scenario, let's imagine that I'm in a group. How would that, I want you all to jump in the chat. How would that affect your buying behavior? If you knew that you were buying in a group versus, meaning you're going to be paying in a group, there's 15 of you that went out to dinner, versus you're going by yourself and you're paying for that bill alone. I want you to jump into the chat and tell me how that would affect your buying behavior. When would you spend more money and when would you spend less money? When would you order a great entree and when would you order a less quality entree? If you could jump in the chat and let me know. But essentially, out of the 6 buckets of personalization here, the 6 buckets of personalization, you're going to have over on the left-hand side is going to be the less with a group. You're going to spend less with a group. That's interesting, Travis. You're going to spend, yeah, there we go. Order more in a group. Let's see what people are saying here. Less with the group. I am impressed. Usually people are going to go, great entree with the group, spend more with the group. So Jordan, if you wouldn't mind, double click into that. Why would you order more with a group? Elizabeth, why would you order more drinks with a group? Yeah, because it's a shared expense, right? So Jordan nailed it here. Is Karen? Karen nailed it here. I want you to double down. Why would you order more in a group than when you're on your own? So whenever we get sent a marketing email, that's like ordering in a group. Our likelihood of having investment is going to be much lower because we know that the group's going to foot the bill. So I'd rather get a high entree because as a group, it's only going to cost me $15 versus $30 standalone. Because if someone orders a $5 thing, we're offsetting that balance in aggregate. So typically more people will order higher paid entrees when they're in a group. So our behavior in group mentality is much different than in a singular mentality. So when you're doing personalization,
you're essentially communicating to them that you are speaking just to them. So it's going to increase the likelihood that they're going to want to respond to you, because it increases the likelihood that they essentially, that they know you're investing in them. So there's 6 different buckets here. The higher buckets where you're going to get response rates from an efficacy standpoint are going to be on the left down to the lowest on the right-hand side, unless you're selling to business owners. I will give that caveat. And the higher efficacy is going to be based at the top of the list down to the lowest at the bottom of the list. So self-authored content's the first bucket. That's going to be anything your prospect authored themselves. So speaking engagements, webinars, articles, posts, etc. And if I had to guess why this is going to have the highest response rate, it's going to be, I want you all to jump in the chat. When you make a post on LinkedIn, what do you want to happen to it? What are you looking to happen to it? What's the gold medal? Response, people reacting, lots of reads, get likes, engagement. So I want you all to double down. Why do you want comments and responses and likes? Chris nailed it. Why do you want validation? Bingo. You're all getting it. Validation, you want your ego massaged, but we want validation, and we want to feel like what we said matters. So with self-authored content, you've got 2 things going on. Adam said, what social media? I don't believe it. So self-authored content, you have 2 things going on in your prospect's head. You have number 1, that you've just validated them and you've stroked their ego. So from a biological standpoint, when you talk to someone about them, or you get someone to talk to you about themselves, you are releasing a chemical in their brain called dopamine that's increasing the likelihood that they want to interact with you. You know, so the quintessential example is girl goes on a date with a guy, let's say, guy asks a lot of questions, pays attention to her, you know, girl gives all the answers. At the end of the date, he's said nothing about himself, and the girl says, I'm in love with him. I want to go on a second date. And the reason is she's not in love with him. She's in love with her brain. You know, so self-authored content's going to validate them. It's going to give them a dopamine rush, and it's going to show them that you're giving time investment to them. The second bucket's engaged content. This is anything that they engage with but didn't author themselves. So this is anything they commented on, shared, liked, if they liked to comment or liked to post. What you're churning here and why it's a lower rate is you're churning the dopamine rush in all cases except for a comment. So the dopamine rush isn't as high because really the hero in the situation is the person who posted it, not you, not the person that you're prospecting into, except for if it's a comment. So comment's going to be the most likely that you're going to get a response, but you're churning. What you're churning here is that the dopamine rush that you're talking about, their work, but what you are still gaining is that you're personalized to them one-to-one. So the third bucket here is going to be self-identified traits. Self-identified traits is going to be anything that they wrote about themselves on LinkedIn, profile line in the About Me section, company line. Sometimes they'll talk about what they did at the company as opposed to what the company does itself. And then the headline. So headline's going to be right below their picture. Sometimes people will put a couple of different things in there for them, about them. The fourth bucket's going to be professional background centric. This is anything related about their professional background that you want to zero in on. So tenure at the company, between companies, recommendations given, recommendations they received, boards that they're on, volunteer experience in terms of professional volunteer experience. So this is the added bucket, if you will. If you've seen any of my content before, this is the bucket that I added in. So this is anything about their background. So I used to do just 5 buckets, but I got sneaky. This is the 6th bucket, or it's the 4th bucket in terms of response, but it's going to be anything about their professional background that you can zero in on. So tenure at the company, trajectory between companies, recommendations given or received, boards that they're on, volunteer experience in terms of professional volunteer experience, awards that they've received, President's Club, et cetera, certifications. Let's say they're, they're certified at a certain thing. I got asked if someone was FliptheScript certified, and I'm like, what's that? Just kidding. No, seriously, what's that? I'm like, approved. So point being, certifications, mutual connections, skill endorsements, but this is anything about their professional background that you can zero in on. The fifth bucket here is going to be junk drawer. This is anything non-business related about them. So in all of these buckets, I highly suggest that you hook what that is, whatever that premise is, to what you do. You can do it very quickly. The way that I do it is I make a list mentally of what are the things that are true about this premise, a list mentally of what are the things that are true about my company, and I find the overlap. And I'm going to stress here, there is an overlap. There's always an overlap. So one of the biggest things I hear about personalization is people will say, well, they're not active, super active on LinkedIn. And I'm like, okay, they might not be making that many posts. They're usually engaging. But what you mean by that is that no one's going to say, here are the top 5 reasons that I want to talk to you about your company, right, in their profile. So I'm essentially scouring through and seeing, like, where is the higher bucket premise that I can make a list of what they do, what the premise is, what's true about the premise, a list of, what FliptheScript does, and where is the overlap. And there's always an overlap, of, like, you could say, like, oh, okay, I have Starbucks coffee. Notice that you're an avid Starbucks lover, and I'm doing this on the fly. When it comes to good coffee, it's all about, highlighting the best flavors so that you can drive more energy. What if you could highlight the best flavors of your sales conversations so you could drive more energy with your reps on the phone so they could have higher quality conversations and book more meetings as a result? There's always an overlap, of, like, hey, notice that you're wearing a black shirt from Free People. What if you could ensure that your reps don't black out on the phone going into a product, feature release dump, so that they can have high quality conversations with their prospect based on their prospect and drive more book meetings as a result. All cheesy examples, but there's always going to be an overlap. And I'm going to stress this because the world of personalization, it's not how often do they have data. When I see reps that struggle with personalization versus they don't struggle with personalization, it's a mindset. I'm going to actually do this, or I'm going to make up excuses. Usually is the difference, candidly, between the two reps. So if I want to do something, I'm not going to find excuses. I'm just going to figure out a way to do it. So within this context, I'd be circling through specifically for junk drawer. This is going to be non-business related. So personal interests, volunteer experience in terms of non-professional, languages spoken, schools attended, things that they're interested in and following. But this is going to be non-business related premises. By the way, I'm going to do a Q&A for the last 10 minutes. Very unlike me, I'm going to do a Q&A for the last 10 minutes of this. So if you have questions while I'm talking, please, please, please stack them up either in the Q&A or in the chat here, and I'll address them head on. The last bucket's going to be company level. And this is going to be anything that's specific to their company. Now, this isn't technically personalization because you could send it to multiple people at the organization. So it's not really a liquid. It's not really a solid. It's a gel, so to speak. But this is anything about the company. And usually where I see people, the only people who see really high efficacy within company level is people who are selling to business owners, or business founders. Because if you talk to me about FliptheScript, you are personalizing to me. Like, it's my, I'm not going to say baby, I think that's trite, but it's everything that I focus on. So what I'm seeking whenever I post content is validation. So if you're validating FliptheScript, you're essentially validating me. So the premise stays the same. So company level is going to be really highly effective if you're selling into business owners. But for everyone else, the times that I use company level is the only time that I by and large use it is if I'm based in APAC. So APAC usually isn't going to use LinkedIn that much, if at all. They're really using Facebook as a business platform from, in my experience, working with teams. And so LinkedIn, the only thing that they have to go off often for APAC-based companies is going to be the company is on LinkedIn, especially if they have multiple branches in different geos. But this is going to be the lowest efficacy. And the reason is you're shifting off of the person, and now you're talking about their company. So the person's, the person is no longer the hero. The person's no longer the focus. It's really almost like a relevance premise at this point. But these are the 6 buckets of personalization. And so again, what I mean by that is one-to-one messaging only. So in review, and then we're going to go into how to intertwine all of that crud into a playbook. Like crushing the vitamin water. Sorry, y'all. I got a little bit of a dry mouth. Listen to that, y'all. It's coming out. I've been going back to Texas too much. Bay Area is going to disown me as if they already hadn't. So we've got, in summary, trigger-based. We've got relevance and personalization. Relevance is one-to-many, building a cohort, and personalization is one-to-one. And within relevance, we have 2 types of relevance. Trigger-based relevance, meaning there is some type of movement. And then we have core static relevance, meaning there is no movement. This is just relevant. The cohort is based on movement or no movement. Underneath trigger-based relevance, we have 3 different types of triggers. We've got inbound, they came to you to request a demo. We've got postbound, meaning the trigger is they engage with some of your marketing content or are researching you online. And then bridgebound, the movement was external from you and your org, but they took some movement that made you believe that they need to buy, now's a good time to buy your product, either from your perspective or from theirs. Your perspective would be like company funding, for instance. They're probably a good buyer for me now. Their perspective would be they moved headquarters and now they need to consolidate all of their bills across geos, and you help solve that problem. So there's a couple things going on there, but trigger-based relevance is going to have 3 different types of triggers. And then within core static relevance, you're going to have 5 different types. Is it statically relevant to them in terms of their buyer persona, statically relevant in terms of them, their company segment, their industry vertical, their product sophistication, and then their tech stack that they currently have. So those are the different pieces. So how do you intertwine all of this poop into a playbook? What do you actually say? People are like, enough with the structure. I love structure, systems. I wake up, live, eat, and breathe for systems. They speed things up. But let's go into camp personalization first, of how do you intertwine all of this into a playbook. So for camp personalization, and this would be, if you believe in personalization, you can do it at scale. Don't believe anyone online. Scale, in terms of the results you're going to see, and even the emails that you can send versus, someone who's on average making a certain amount of dials. Given industry statistics, you can almost double it with personalization. You can scale it, different topic for a different time. But within personalization, let's dive in here. So if you're camp personalization and you want to intertwine all of these elements into a message, the first line would be trigger-based relevance only. So notice that you requested a demo. And then the second line, I would suggest you go straight into book the meeting. You're optimizing on inbound for speed. People want to talk to you about your product. They don't want to be asked 15,000 questions by an SDR. They don't want to wait 6 days to do it. They don't want to wait another 7 days to where their AE shows up on the line with mustard stain on their shirt, and ask them the same questions to begin with. They are optimizing for speed here. Now, there's a war over this. Again, different conversation for a different time. You can use Chili Piper very easily to speed this up and to, in my experience, drive at minimum 50% more conversion. But point being, from a play perspective, if you want to do a sequence, you're optimizing for speed. So the first line, I would just mention the trigger-based relevance. Notice you requested a demo, and then I go into book the time so that they can book the time, either with your SDR team if you want to take them through a brutal qualification, or with the AE team if you really want to speed it up. The second type is postbound or bridgebound. So Postbound as a reminder means their trigger-based relevance is in relationship to your marketing team, and bridge bound is their trigger is independent of you, but you think that it causes you think it raises the likelihood that they might buy because it introduces a new problem, or how valuable they are to you, like they just acquired funding. Hopefully we're not doing many of those. But for a postbound play or a bridge bound play, if that is their trigger, then I would use in the first line the trigger based relevance. And the great news is you can code all of this in, meaning this part can be pre-written. Notice that you downloaded content, even if you want to hyper tag the content they downloaded. This is what I was doing. People would always say to me like, oh, she's personalization girl. I'm like, I really am lead routing girl and scale girl. You just don't see all of that infrastructure. So all of the plays that I had built for my reps were content downloads, webinar registrants, event attendees, and in real time, my CRM was knocking out all of the people that didn't hit the profile that I needed them to, of like, they weren't the right title, they weren't the right size company. And then it was assigning them to the person who owned the account. And if they didn't own the account, no one owned the account, but they still hit the profile, then we had a postbound unowned team. Who was 4x past quota, and I strapped them with an aggressive Snow Queen quota. So point being, if it's a postbound or bridge bound play, I would code the trigger-based relevance in, hi blank, hi Susan, reason for my outreach is I noticed you recently downloaded the content, and then put the words, but more importantly, and then they put in the personalization. So this is going to drive all of those leads who are downloading content, webinar registrants, event attendees, et cetera, their conversion through the roof, because we are used to getting the follow-up email of, I noticed you attended this event, want to buy my stuff? And they're not even right with what they send you. They're like, notice you dropped by the booth. I'm like, homie, I didn't drop by the booth. And the marketing team's high-fiving themselves. So point being, I would put the trigger-based relevance for postbound or bridge-bound. Reason for my outreach is I noticed that you recently IPO'd, but more importantly, reason for my outreach is I noticed that you requested a demo, but we didn't get the time on the calendar with you. Equally as importantly, more importantly, so use the trigger-based relevance, and the strength of this is 80% of any message you can pre-write. And the only thing you have to do is, if you're using outreach, you can put a tag in there that says personalized premise, personalized excerpt. So I'd say, but more importantly, I love this article that you wrote where you're talking about X, Y, and Z, especially the line blank. So if they take a trigger-based action, all I'm doing is the pre-coded part is the content that they downloaded or the webinar that they registered for or the blog thing. They subscribe to a blog, but more importantly, and then I'm shifting the conversation back onto them. I saw you wrote this article. I noticed that you liked this comment. I loved your about me section where you're saying X, Y, and Z. I saw that you were an avid fan of Taylor Swift. I saw you were an avid fan of, what else do I like? Anna Wintour. She's the chief and editor CEO of Vogue. I saw that you're a huge Michael Jackson fan. So that personalization is what's going to interrupt the pattern, because their pattern is that they see a normal content download, email is, thanks for downloading my content. For more information, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, delete. So if you say, but more importantly, and you write the personalization, you're going to drive up the likelihood that they're going to read the message. Now, if they're going to respond to the message by taking a meeting, comes down to how relevant you are in the second line in terms of their core relevance. So personalization, the thing that it solves is there's 3 pieces to outreach. Do they read the message? How relevant were you in talking about that you need to solve for? And then did you, from a psychological perspective, take care of their ego and their ego states? This bucket is way more important than people, invest in, from my view, of like, you shouldn't command someone to do something unless you want them to do the opposite. The point being, the first bucket of personalization helps it helps interrupt the pattern. So the first line I'd say for postbound or bridge bound, I'd code in the trigger-based relevance. I saw you downloaded content, but more importantly, and then you personalize. In the second line, I would hook that personalization within 2 to 3 words, reorg the words. If like, I saw your line blank, it's all about scale. What if you could scale, really effective messaging principles like you mentioned in your article? And then I would go into the core relevance. So this second line, I normally am viewing it as, how are you thinking about, not to be an annoying sales rep. I do a pattern interrupt, not to be an annoying sales rep, pardon the ask, not to be nosy, but what are you doing to, and I would tie within 2 or 3 words, the personalization, the excerpt that you're using. And then I go into a couple of different technical problems, business impact, leading indicators, leaning indicators, or lagging indicators within my question. The difference between all of those is a technical problem is going to be a problem with the process or a tool. A business problem, like my alarm clock's broken. A business problem is going to be the result or the outcome of that technical problem. I get to work late. A business impact is going to be the impact to that person personally as a result of the business problem. So because I get to work late, I'm going to get fired. And then the root cause is going to be what's causing the technical problem. So for instance, 2 wires are crossed within the clock, and so it's broken. So I'm either talking about those within the question, or I'm talking about leading, leaning, and lagging indicators. This is a crash course, but leading indicators is an input. If I want to lose weight, then the input that I would drive that would affect my lagging indicator is going to be, calories eaten or how much I'm exercising. A lagging indicator is going to be the goal that your buyer persona is optimizing for. So for instance, 2 baseball teams play against each other. There's a lagging indicator for which team is better. If you jump in the chat, what is the lagging indicator for which team is better when 2 baseball teams play against one another? Yeah. What do you mean by who won, Chris? Final result. So what do you mean by that? What is who won based on? Like, yeah, the score. Bingo. There's your lagging indicator. People don't know what this is for their buyers. How the hell am I going to talk to someone about baseball if I don't know that who scores the most runs is the one that wins? Like, absolutely jarring. But point being, within this question, this second line, I'm hooking 2 to 3 words of the personalization. What are you doing to? I hook 2 to 3 words, like you mentioned in your article. And then I put comma, and I put either a technical problem or a root cause, and then I put comma, and I would put business problem or business impact or lagging indicator as a result. So within the question infrastructure in that second line, that's how I'm intertwining core relevance. So the reason it's core relevance is the technical problems, business problems, the leading indicators, leaning indicators, and lagging indicators are the ones for that buyer. If I'm talking to a salesperson, I'm talking about quota. If I'm talking to sales enable or SDR, I'm talking about booked meetings. There is a difference. And then I'm talking about the problems that impact those. The technical problems, the business problems, So that second line is how I'm intertwining those. So I do trigger-based relevance up top, but more importantly, I saw you downloaded this content, but more importantly, I saw that you wrote this article where you're talking about X, Y, and Z. What if you could, what are you doing to X, Y, and Z, like you mentioned in your article, comma, technical problem, comma, and business problem as a result? What are you doing to avoid that? So that's the infrastructure of that email. It's pretty simple when you think about it, but it just takes a mindset shift of like, again, I need this personalization because it interrupts the pattern and it gets them to read the email. One of the biggest problems is, do they read the email? Do they open the email? Do they read the whole email? I want you all to start, one of the most helpful things for me for building all of this was understanding how I act as a buyer. When I lie to people and say I'm going into a meeting, why did I do that? What did I want instead? When I walk into a retail shop and they say, how can I help you? And what would you say back to that? Y'all walk into a jump in the chat. Y'all walk into a retail shop and then I say, how can I help you? Bingo, Travis got it. I'm good. What's another one? What's the other line that we always give them? You're walking into, maybe I just retail shop too much. Just looking. You all got it. Look at all these just looking, just looking, just looking, just looking, just looking. And why do you say that? What are you scared of? I could help you. I know the store. So what are you scared of whenever you say just looking? You know, you get pressure. Bingo, Kathleen. You might buckle and buy something you don't want. So just start thinking. I would just get monomaniacal introspective when how you operate as a buyer. When I lie to them, when I say I'm going into a meeting, when I say send me an email, do you have any intention of reading that email? Yes or no? If you go into the chat, yes or no? If you tell someone send me an email, no. You all said no. So what did you want instead? When you said send me an email, what? Yeah, you wanted them to go away. Susan already got it. So why did you say send me an email? Why did you say send me an email? I just want to learn on my own. I'm busy. Okay. But you said you just wanted them to go away. So why didn't you just tell them that? Why didn't you just say, I want you to go away? Why didn't you just, you know, you're too nice. Susan, yes. Fear of disappointing people. Fear of disappointing people. You don't want to be mean. You don't want to be the bad guy. You don't want to hurt their feelings. You don't want to, you know, but you also don't want to be pressured to be sold. So you say your objection is, I'm just looking, you know, so same over. So you all know this. So what I'm positing to you is use your information of how you operate as a buyer to base everything. When you come into your email in the morning and it implodes and all these emails come in, what's the first thing that you do in the morning? Before you do anything, you see all 50 emails, clear them out. So delete, you're all getting it. So Morgan, I'm going to zero in on you. Do you open every single message that you delete? Do you open every single message that you delete? Or no? No way. Okay, so we got no. So how do you know that you can delete it? You didn't even open it, but you knew that you could delete it. So how do you know that? You know, subject line is spammy, right? So Derek, you all are getting it. So start thinking, start looking through your email about the types of language that marketing sends and the types of language that salespeople send and the types of language, you know, systematize it. It's not that different. We're all saying the same crap, just following up, just circling back, just bubbling at the top of my inbox, just checking in here. Happy Monday. Hope you and your kids are safe during these uncertain times, putting a value prop in the subject line, you know, on. That's the pattern you got to interrupt, you know. So personalization is one way to do it, but cement that in your brain. Start building a sheet of over the next 2 months. The biggest thing that you can do to help yourself, start building a sheet over the next 2 months of when you're deleting stuff. How do you know that you could delete it? Why did you delete it? When someone picks up, when you pick up the call and it's a salesperson, how did you know? And then you know the pattern you have to interrupt. So the rules are, there are a certain amount of rules that you have to stay within, meaning you can't interrupt the pattern for bad reasons, you know, but that's the pattern of that is the Bible, so to speak, of things that you cannot say. Because if you say those things, you're going to be deleted, right? So I would operate monomaniacally on how do you operate as a buyer? How do you operate as a buyer? When you lie to people, when you'll start to see trends. Humanity can be systematized. It's very, very easy. Use psychology principle, like it's very, very easy. So it's just about getting around those patterns. So post-bound or bridge-bound, I'd use a trigger-based relevance. I'm like, how do I tie this back to the content? Post-bound or bridge-bound, I do the trigger-based relevance, but more importantly, and personalize in the subject line. Your article, comma, Danny, on blank. I'm going to open that email. That email's to me. It's not a group bill. I got to open this. And then the second line, hook it for 2 to 3 words and talk about their core static relevance. What pains and problems do you solve within their buyer persona, or for their segment, or for their vertical, etc. And then cold outbound for personalization. You only have personalization. You have no trigger. So I'd say reason for my outreach is I saw that you wrote this article. I especially like this excerpt blank. And then you do the same thing in the second line that you did within postbound or bridgebound. Pardon the ask, not to be an annoying sales rep, not to be nosy, not to ask a question when I haven't earned the right, but what are you doing to hook the personalization within 2 to 3 words, comma, list a technical problem or a root cause, comma, if it's a problem, you say prevent, list a technical problem or a root cause, comma, list the business impact, the business impact or the business problem as a result. And then if you want to talk about leading, and lagging indicators, you're listing those. So talk about the problems within the infrastructure question, just lead it with 2 to 3 words on the personalization. So this is how I systematize the entire thing and the entire playbook. And the great news about this is everyone is like bananas focused on, I want to measure which email, blah, blah, did the best. I want to use that to figure out what's my conversion rate, what's my subject line, which one's opening the best, which one's responding the best, what's the sentiment, and what are the booked meetings. The problem with all of that is even if you figure out this play is working, okay, what's the one thing question that you don't have the answer to? I'm going to see if you can guess it in the chat. I have a 50% open rate versus a 40% open rate. Okay, so I know that the 50% one is better. What's the question that I don't know the answer to, though? That's the only important question. Why? Yes, Derek, why? Why? Why did this work better? Why did this email work better? What's the causational relationship? And we do not have that data. We do not have that data. No one has studied causational effect within email or within cold calls. Don't be fooled. We have not gotten down to that. Maybe correlational, maybe. I don't buy it. I don't see the stats team studying it. This is all respectfully, but we do not know why it's working. So point being, the best thing that you can get from sales engagement, which is very valuable, is which play is working better. Is content downloads working better? Webinar registrants working better? IPOs working better? M&A. So you can prioritize which place you use. So I re-ranked for my SDRs every single month based on the data of conversion. What are the titles on the back end? What was converting into closed won? What was the ASP for each one of these? What was the expansion sell on the back end? I was reorging for them, and you can put whatever criteria you want in there. Which play is the most effective? Is it content downloads or is it IPO? 50,000 MQLs, I need 10,000 content downloads based on our stats on what's going to convert. That's the best. And you can play an ROI game. I need 500 webinar registrants. Your marketing team will sigh in relief. Oh my God, thank God. So now I know what I'm optimizing for. So you're giving them a guidebook. The only difference, marketing will love it because you're not like, I just need more. You're like, I need 100. It becomes a math game. Bill James is one of my biggest influences. If you want to read up about him, he systematized baseball. He took the art out of it. There is still art in it. And he said that it's like 5%, 10%, but most of it can be systematized. I do think it's worth noting he is also the most hated man in baseball because he did that. Because he said, you're not just, it's not all about you being a special snowflake. There's a system here. Billy Beane went off the back of his work. But point being, you can systematize this to work to your favor. And then the playbook for no personalization. So there's very little difference here. For inbound, I go trigger-based relevance only. You notice that they wanted to talk to you. Thanks for requesting a demo. And I go in the CTA to book some time. So the exact same as inbound for personalization. But in the camp no personalization, you got to keep in mind, you can only talk about relevance. So it's got to be a one-to-many play. So I'd use trigger-based relevance in the first line. I notice you downloaded content. It's not going to work because what everyone's doing, full disclosure, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. I'll give you a tip on how you can make it work the best, but it's not going to work. And then second line is core relevance. You're going into their buyer persona. So you have no personalization. You miss out on the dopamine rush. You're hitting the pattern of a normal salesperson. But I would do the trigger-based relevant. I noticed they downloaded content. I noticed that they, IPO'd. I noticed, and the funny thing is, this is what people say is personalization. They're like, okay, this is personalization. I'm like, no, it's not. And this is all systematized. Run this through your brain. If I can write a message and it's one to many, I don't need anyone to be able to send it. I don't need a human. I can send 1 billion of them through Marketo or whatever. I'm not suggesting we take away sales reps. I'm just suggesting we use a human for what we need to use a human for. So code in all of this language and then use them just for the personalization bit and just for the hooking bit. Even if people can tease out a personalization bit, a platform they cannot hook it. So you still need a person to do that. I've jumped on the line with, I think, 40 different companies that have told me they can personalize at scale, meaning they can tease out the premise. Then I have to respectfully shatter their dreams of, yeah, but you can't hook it. And without the hook, people feel it's disingenuous. Notice you went to A&M, notice you wear beanies, want to buy Oracle. How's Wednesday at 2? So point being, bridge bound and post bound, just give the trigger-based relevance and then go into the core relevance in the second line of what's core irrelevant to them in terms of buyer persona. And then cold outbound, I would go core relevance only. Reason for my outreach is I noticed that you're the VP of sales over at blank, pardon the ask, but what are you doing to blank, blank, and blank? Again, that's going to be the best template that you can send, but it's still just a template and you don't need a person to do it. So my biggest tip here, and then we'll close out, is like I said, I do Q&A. I'm going to download this Q&A. I'm really sorry, everyone. I'm going to scan through and see if there's a couple low-hanging fruit for everyone who's logged off the line. But my biggest tip here, if you're doing templates only, is you have to interrupt the pattern. Your livelihood is dependent on it. So the pattern is, we are blank. We're the number one blank. We do this. We help. You have to interrupt that pattern. You can use emotional words to do it. Emotional words are any kind of words that cause an emotion to arise in someone. I would set the Bible of things that companies normally say, then say, I gotta go outside of this, but I can't be silly and I can't be offensive and I can't like all of the rules. So if you do me a favor, go to FliptheScript within season 1. I go into the 7 deadly sins. There's an episode on the 7 deadly sins. So that is the 7 things that you of attractive messaging. Those are all the things you have to achieve. And then you cannot hit this pattern. So that's my biggest ask. So Chuck Jones did this, and then I promise I will close out. Chuck Jones knew that he was a bottleneck. He was the writer for Acme of Wile E. Coyote, Roadrunner, etc. He knew he was bottlenecked in terms of how many ideas he could put out. Ideas, but here are the rules. You cannot say this, and you have to do this, achieve this within every episode. So that's the pattern. My biggest tip here is stay away from the 7 deadly sins. You have to achieve the 7 pillars. and you have to be different in terms of words than what everyone is saying. We're blank, we're the number one blank, we do this, here's our social proof, one time for a quick chat, 15 minutes, looking forward to it, cheers, best regards, all that crap. Start making the list of all the stuff the salespeople say, common phrase, and you know them. The reason you know them when you think of a person in your family, what are the common things that they say? The phrases that come to your mind of that person in specific. You know, so people said like Becc always wear Carhartt beanies. And the reason they know that is they are systematizing in their head, oh, in 5 different case scenarios, she's worn a Carhartt beanie. So we know system, we can recognize it, we can understand it. So I would say start writing down all the phrases that salespeople say, like all the crap that Corporate Pro publishes as jokes. The reasons it's funny is because we all do it. So just go through his videos and start writing down all the crap that he's saying in there. And now you have the list for all the crap salespeople are saying. Leverage that in Camp No Personalization. So again, personalization is going to be a quick way to do that. That it's a quote unquote golden ticket. But if you're not comfortable with it, I totally understand. I get it. Then you have to avoid the 7 sins, hit the 7 pillars, and say anything that's outside of all the normal sales things that salespeople say. So I talked about this a lot on the tour. And the shocking thing was I basically handed the mic over to the audience. I'm like, yeah, let's circle back on this. I was like, hey, what are the common phrases we say? And everyone is shouting them out. So I'm like, we all know them because we all say them. And that's what people ignore and delete. So now what? Now we have to say something different. So point being, I know we have 3 types. We've got trigger-based relevance within inbound, postbound, and bridgebound. There's some type of movement. Inbound, it's to you. Postbound, it's in relationship to your marketing team. And bridgebound, it's some kind of action independent. You have core static relevance. There's 5 types of it. And you've got 6 different buckets of personalization based on efficacy. Here's how you hook them all together. Here's how you hook them all together for a playbook. But I hope that the triple underscore is this. You can systematize it. You can systematize it. You can rely on that system, you know, to where you only have to use a human for the things that you need to use a human for. So sales reps can't be replaced if you're doing it appropriately. If you're personalizing, we'll never be able to replace that. We just can't. You know, so I hope that all the fire is well received. I am irrevocably in your corner, that I want us to have the results that we want. And there's a quick, easy way to do it. And so I am very, 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 very thankful that for your attention, for your time, for spending the time on the webinar today. I think that's the first step. This is the first step of the conversation to get it going back into the direction that we need it. So I cannot tell you how appreciative I am of you showing up today and you being a part of this madness. So this is just a starting point. We can grow it together. These are the 2 different playbooks. Please, please, please reach out to me. Let me know, you know, how your results are going. Any kind of questions that you have. I am here in with may the odds be ever in your favor. Sales is a wonderful profession. Thank you everyone for coming today. I'm going to send out the recording. I will send out, hopefully you have the asset from the tour. If you don't, then we're going to be sending out the asset over email to everyone who attended today. So thank you to everyone for showing up, for being so engaged, for making this a super fun experience for me. So very, very excited with the engagement that we had today. So talk to y'all soon. Book some meeting, close some deals, get some. Let's do this together. Toodaloo.